Hey, this is Mike from the Run Testers, and this is our multi-tester review of the Inov-8 Trailfly Ultra G280. So here's the key things you need to know about the Inov-8 Trailfly Ultra G280. It sits in between Inov-8's hulking Trailfly Ultra G300 shoe and the Trailfly G270, and is built for all long distance running, including ultramarathons. It's built primarily with off-road running in mind, and Inov-8 says it's best suited to harder trails. It's priced at £165 in the UK and $185 in the US, putting it in slightly cheaper than Inov-8's Trailfly Ultra G300 shoe. In terms of that drop, it's an 8mm one, and the width is a 5 on Inov-8's own 1:5 scale, making it the widest fit option based on its own sizing. In the upper department, you're getting a knitted kind with a padded tongue and heel to help deliver comfort and durability. Weight-wise, the 280 in the name is intended to signal the general weight you can expect here, though we found it varied over our sizes. The outsole features 4mm lugs and is made from graphene-enhanced rubber to deliver sticky grip and to increase durability and the amount of running this shoe can handle. The big story here is in the midsole, where Inov-8 is introducing its new nitrogen-infused Fly Speed midsole foam to offer a softer ride, but also delivering big bounce and energy return. It's also including an 8mm deep adaptive flex groove to help the shoe better adjust to more uneven terrain.
So fit for me, I ran in a UK 8.5, which is my size, and I would recommend going true to size in these. I think the fit was really solid, really good heel hold, no slipping forward in the shoe, even on sort of slightly steeper downhill bits. I got good lace lockdown overall. I think you do really noticeable sort of wider toe box than some other Inov-8 shoes that I've used in the past. I think it's noticeable, and I think it is a good sort of feeling on the foot. You've got plenty of wiggle room in the toe box there, width and lengthwise, I think, which is great. So yeah, I would go true to size.
So I found the Trailfly fit me very well, true to size. It's definitely a bit of a departure from the classic Inov-8 fit with that stretchy knit upper, wider design in general. So yeah, really comfortable, nice and roomy, but a good hold around the midfoot and heel when you're kind of pelting down hills and that kind of thing. So yeah, very good fit, true to size.
So I would say go true to size based on my time with a UK size 8 in this shoe. I would say particularly it's very spacious up front in the toe box, definitely very roomy. I think that's mainly down to the fact you've got this kind of knitted upper, which is a bit of a departure from what we've seen from the other Trailfly shoes in terms of the upper. Elsewhere, I found it offered a really good, nice kind of feel and hold at the midfoot and the heel. You've got a good kind of amount of padding at the heel and at the tongue here as well. I think you maybe need to play around a little bit with the laces to get a very good lockdown on the top of the foot, but ultimately, if you can get that to work, and most people will, it'll be absolutely fine. So yeah, for me, based on my UK size 8, I would say it's a roomy shoe, and I would say go true to size based on my testing.
I've taken the Trailfly out for runs on a nice mix of terrains. I had it when I was up in Scotland for a bit, going up and down the Pentland Hills and some nice steep grassy and gravelly descents, some rooty ground, and then down in London I've done some tamer stuff and forest trails and canal towpaths, that kind of thing. I haven't been able to do anything too long in it, just because I'm not really in that stage of my training, but my longest run was about 13k and it was cut short when I fell over. We'll talk more about that later, but mostly just enjoying runs on some up and down terrain in Scotland and some flatter ground in England. So straight off the bat, I'd say this is definitely a lighter, nimbler and more enjoyable shoe for me than the G300, which is okay. You know, you could cruise around it, but I did find it a bit of a tank. This is definitely a light shoe. I mean, it's still not that light. My UK size 9 is 319 grams. I think Inov-8 averages the range for their weights, which means that, you know, I'm above the average weight by a fair bit. But it feels quite light, and then when you're going up hills and you're kind of tiptoeing up those very steep hills or walking up them even, it doesn't feel like it's weighing you down at all. And then it's quite agile, actually. Coming down some quite tricky downhills, I didn't feel like it was in any way like too big, and that little flexibility groove does help a bit with making you feel like you can jink around things as you come down hills quickly. I'd say it's certainly more for those kind of long runs when, you know, you're going to be working hard at times, but you're not like trying to set a pace on runnable ground so much. So when I have been down here in London and running on forest trails, like, you know, being mostly for easy stuff, if I pick up the pace at all, it feels a bit big, but it's more a shoe that I think is going to be comfortable to use for long periods. Off-road, the grip has been absolutely excellent, as I'd expect from Inov-8. I don't think there's any brand that makes better outsoles than them for off-road running. I've gone down some, yes, like I say, some steep descents at speed whilst filming even, which is a bit stupid. And you know, I was really had no doubts at all in the grip. Felt very secure in it. Didn't move an inch. Didn't slip an inch, even on kind of muddy, grassy descents. And we're actually going through a very rooty forest at one point. I was hitting roots quite a lot, and it wasn't just sliding straight off them. It was finding some purchase. So yeah, great grip off-road. On-road, I don't really think this is a road to trail shoe, and when I was coming back from the forest one time on wet kind of pavements, I did slip and, dislocate my finger and bash up my ribs a little bit. It was one of those slightly unlucky things where you're just taking a corner and clearly I caught the edge of something slightly wrong and went over, so I don't really think this is a road to trail shoe in the conventional sense. Like, Inov-8 has the park claw, which does a great job of gripping on the road as well as trails, but it's okay on the road in general. I've run on the road a few times with it. Every single run I've done with it has been a road to trail run, really, but it is a little bit skittish on wet pavements, which is just permanently the state here in the UK. So I would say be a little bit careful of it on that terrain. You don't want to fall over like me, but off-road, the grip is superb, no faults at all.
So on my run test, I've done over 30 miles in these, and I've taken them to a kind of range of different places. I've done the road to trail, which is what they're for. I've taken them kind of on sort of light trails, river paths. I've taken them on grass. I've taken them on as steep a downhill as I can find here in London. I've taken them on a bit of kind of slick mud. I've taken them through puddles, all those kind of things. I've put them to as much of a trail test as possible where I live here in London. We've got a place called Richmond Park, which is about as traily as it gets. But it is lighter trails. We're not talking about kind of steep technical descents. That is the caveat here with what I'm about to say about what I felt with this shoe. And I think it's worth noting the longest duration that I've put into this shoe was around about 2.5 hours on a run. So haven't quite gone into the ultra territory, which is also something these are supposed to be capable of, but have been out in them for a good long period of time. Now, one of my initial reactions when I put these on and started to run in them was how much I felt like they felt a little bit more like a Hoka, or at least the most kind of Hoka-like shoe that I've ever run in from Inov-8. Now, what that kind of boiled down to is I felt like these were good for kind of easy rolling miles. The kind of things where if I was doing an ultra and I was moving at a kind of lower and slower pace, for me, that these would handle with aplomb. They're definitely springier than other Inov-8 shoes that I've run in that tend to sort of come up a bit firm, thanks to that kind of nitrogen-infused midsole. And I really enjoyed that ride, that sort of slightly bouncier ride, slightly springier ride, without kind of, it's not overkill. This is still a sort of an ultra kind of trail shoe, so you don't want to be wobbling all over the shop. You've still got good stability. You've still got, I think, Inov-8's sort of trademark kind of good ground contact feel and connection with the ground underfoot. That is still here in spades in this shoe. But I think where that kind of slightly springier midsole really comes in is the road to trail bit. I ran, in one of my runs, I ended up actually running quite a lot of miles on the road to get to the trail. Got a bit lost on the route I was taking, and it coped with the road fine. You've got the 4mm lugs, which I think offer good grip on the trails, but also they're not too sticky and too tacky, and that graphene grip isn't too sticky when you're hitting the road. You're not feeling like you're having to sort of work and there's a lot of drag going on. So the road to trail thing here, I think, is working out quite nicely. On the trail, I feel like that midsole unit engaged with the ground and the terrain a little more than some other sort of Inov-8 shoes that I've run in the past. I feel like you were kind of, it was almost like you're engaging with the lumps and bumps a little more than kind of, I guess, sort of feeling like you're sort of bashing over them. I don't know. They flexed. There was a bit more kind of movement in the shoe, which I really liked. I also think that kind of slightly higher drop was a little bit kinder on my calves. I've done Inov-8 shoes fresh out the box and gone and run ultra in them before in the zero drop or the low drop shoes, and you do feel it. And if you're used to sort of running in a sort of higher drop shoe, then this one's definitely going to be a bit more your thing. Now, throw in, I think, that overall kind of good foot placement, good stability, good comfort, and I think I could happily run a 50k plus ultra in these shoes at the kind of lower and slower paces that I would be doing that kind of distance in. And I think they're particularly well suited to the kind of UK ultras that I might do here, where you're getting a bit of mixture running through villages and sort of towns, and then up onto trails that they're not crazy steep, but there are some sort of trickier sort of descents, things like I'm thinking about like the South Downs Way or the North Downs Way, those kind of runs, maybe even over into kind of like a coastal run like the classic quarter you might do on sort of Cornish coastline. And the same goes there for the grip. I think in all the conditions that I ran in with these, I found them sticky enough, there was enough traction, I found that grip kind of really reliable and did a great job, and I'd be sort of happy putting them through that kind of range of races that I've just described.
So I will start by saying that I am not an ultra runner. I'm not going to run ultra distance in this shoe anytime soon, but I have done just under 50k in this shoe now, and that's from a mix of kind of running my local trails. I've kind of run on kind of muddy kind of canal paths as well, mixture of surfaces. I've done a little bit of road, but I definitely think this is a shoe kind of dedicated to trail, so I try not to do too much road stuff in it. And yeah, I've run in dry and wet conditions to kind of test the outsole grip. I've run on kind of gravelly paths, kind of in the woods, kind of a little bit of elevation, not a huge amount, but just to kind of see how it handles on kind of elevation, a little bit of kind of the descents as well. And overall, I would say, just because it's got Ultra in the name doesn't necessarily mean that it's a shoe that won't work for you if you're running less than that distance. And that's kind of what I found in my running time overall, really. So I'm going to start off by talking about the upper, because I do think it really kind of shapes the experience that you get of running it in this shoe, and also in comparison to what you get from the other Inov-8 Trailfly Ultra shoes. Now, obviously, it's a different material. It definitely, I would say, fits a little bit more snug, a little kind of hugs the foot a little bit nicer. And comfort seems to be the priority from this upper, and also giving something that's very spacious. So something that if you're going to run long in, you've got the kind of freedom and the kind of support and comfort to kind of allow you to do that and do it from kind of comfortable surroundings. Now, some people may lament there's kind of a lack of kind of structure here in that upper, but ultimately I think in terms of the way that it's best used, in terms of kind of going out and cruising for kind of long distance, I think it's absolutely fine from that point of view. So for me, I think that's a big thing to kind of take on board here with this shoe, the Inov-8 Trailfly Ultra G280, particularly in comparison to the other Inov-8 shoes that kind of sit in this range as well. Getting into the kind of key thing here, which is that fly speed midsole. Now, it's a nitrogen infused midsole foam. We've seen this from Brooks's shoes, we've seen it from Puma's shoes as well, a couple of road shoes. Brooks has done it in one of their trail shoes as well, the Cold Era 6. Now, in terms of what that midsole foam brings to the Inov-8 shoe, what it brings to the trails, Inov-8 says ultimately it's going to give you kind of a bouncier ride, it's going to give you kind of good return. Now, for me, I would say the feeling of running in a shoe and that midsole foam is that it's bouncy. I think, interestingly, Inov-8 has chosen not to use its kind of boomerang footbed, which I think kind of contributes to that kind of bouncy cushion feel that you get from some of its other shoes. But interestingly, it's decided to leave that out here. But yeah, I definitely think you notice it. I do think it creates a ride that feels, I think, very nice and offers a little bit more enjoyment in terms of that ride overall. It's not overly bouncy, I would say, the sensation on kind of the trails that I did. What I do think is, though, it created a ride that was actually very, very enjoyable. It felt very, very consistent, not particularly aggressive in terms of that kind of that ride that you're getting, but it felt very, very reliable, solid, stable, controlled, all the kind of things that I think you would want if you were running a little bit longer in the shoe. So I think where that fly speed midsole really comes into its own is giving you that scope or something that makes it feel a little bit nicer to run quicker in. I think what you're seeing there is, you've got a shoe here that isn't as heavy as the G300, isn't super light as the G270, but it kind of it definitely veers to the lighter side, I would say. And what you're almost doing when you're running a little bit quicker and you're engaging that midsole a lot more, you're feeling that kind of more responsive feel from that midsole foam as well. And I said, it's not a heavy shoe, so I think it definitely has the capability to run a little bit quicker too. I think if you've got a nice long stretch that you really want to go after, this is a shoe that allows you to kind of pick up pace and not feel overly kind of clunky or heavy, or feel like it's fighting against you to run a little bit quicker. And then we finish up on the outsole, which Inov-8 makes some of the best outsoles on trail shoes, and it is no different on this shoe either. I think it's best suited to those kind of harder trails. It was fine in some mud and kind of wet leaves. I slipped around maybe a couple of times a little bit, but nothing too severe would made me be concerned about running in kind of wet conditions. I've run in the Inov-8 kind of Trailfly shoes, and from a grip point of view in the mud, it's been absolutely fine. I would say that I wouldn't particularly take this out on roads. A little bit of roady elements that I did, I definitely felt that outsole, so it's not a shoe that I would particularly, put in a lot of kind of road time in. But I think in terms of sticking to those trails, harder kind of softer surfaces, it's absolutely fine. Kind of rounds off what I would say is a very solid shoe from Inov-8 with the Trailfly Ultra G280.
So my verdict on the Inov-8 Trailfly G280 is that I really enjoyed running them. I found them a really good, solid trail shoe. I liked them a lot. I guess I didn't love them. I didn't sort of, I'm not absolutely blown away by them. I think the roomier toe box is an absolute win. I feel like the sort of slightly higher stack will really, really benefit some people. I do feel like they've got a little bit more kind of zing in them underneath thanks to that nitrogen-infused foam. I think other people will really enjoy that too. That said, I don't think they haven't really sacrificed any stability or any of that ground contact feel that I think you really get, that shines out when you're running in Inov-8 shoes, and I like that over kind of longer ultras. This is a shoe that I would definitely happily lace up to go and do a 50 to 100k ultra on kind of mixed terrain, trail to tarmac, or tarmac to trail. and whichever way you go, whichever way you run, mine sort of take me across both of those. And yeah, I think they're super comfortable. I think, you know, a really, really solid performance here from Inov-8, and I think a shoe that adds something interesting to the overall mix of shoes that they've got in their range.
So I think this is another solid trail shoe from Inov-8. It's more of a comfort focused shoe than some of the options in the past, and in general it's not really the kind of one that suits me as a runner, I will say that. So like, I've always been a great fan of Inov-8 for their things like their X Talon range, the very lightweight, deep lugs, muddy running shoes I use for cross country races, or kind of the races I do probably got up to about half marathon, 15 miles in length, and generally they're on quite soft ground, and I've got a narrow fit, so those, you know, basically Inov-8's old shoes were right in the wheelhouse for me. Things like the torpedo like X Talon G210, all that, great for cross country, great grip on slick ground, and otherwise very lightweight and not really too concerned about long distance comfort. So this is concerned about that, and it does a good job of it. Like, the midsole is not explosive or responsive or bouncy or anything like that, but it is comfortable, and the outsole works well on a range of terrains, especially off-road. Like I say, I would be a bit careful on the road. If you're looking for a road to trail shoe, the Park Claw from Inov-8 is better. When I fell over, it wasn't the only time that I'd felt it slip a little bit on wet pavement, so it's certainly a shoe that I trusted much more off-road. And there, I trust it like on anything, like really tricky ground, like wet, like I say, wet routes, wet descents, everything like that, no problems at all. Just be a bit careful on the roads. I think overall it's a bit too much shoe for me. Like, it's better than the G300 in that regard, but it still feels just a bit big at times on the foot. And actually I prefer the ride of the Hoka Speedgoat 5, which has a much more kind of rolling, cruisy ride that I like a lot. And if I was, you know, ever going to push towards longer distance, ultra distances, that's still the kind of shoe I would expect to use. Like, it's got an outsole that grips fantastically well on the road and the trails. It's probably not going to be quite as good as the Inov-8 on very wet and grassy descents and that kind of thing, but yeah, I do like that shoe a lot, and I prefer the ride of it in general to the Inov-8.
So my verdict on the Inov-8 Trailfly Ultra G280 is that I don't think you have to run ultra distance to appreciate that this is a very good trail shoe. I would say first and foremost, it's very comfortable. That upper creates something that's very roomy, spacious, something that I think is well suited to running longer distances and giving you the kind of surroundings to kind of run those longer distances as well. And then I think you have the capacity to run a little bit quicker in this shoe as well. And I think that's maybe where that midsole foam or that midsole itself kind of creates something that I think works a bit better. There's quicker paces. You've got a nicely weighted shoe. It's not too heavy as well. And if you wanted something to run a little bit quicker in, I think this shoe is capable of doing it as well. And then you've got that outsole, which, as we said, you know, it's typically very, very good from Inov-8 in terms of that grip and traction on harder and softer surface. Now, so think about other shoes that kind of sit in the same category as the Inov-8. I would say things like the Hoka Speedgoat 5 definitely springs to mind. I would say that shoe in comparison to this one maybe offers a slightly more, I don't know, it's subjective, but I think maybe a more excitable, more aggressive kind of ride, particularly when you're running a little bit quicker in it, in comparison to this shoe. I think you get more protective elements in that shoe as well, particularly, you know, when you're out kind of running on kind of more technical, kind of challenging trails as well. I think also things like the Saucony Peregrine 12, it's a nice light trail shoe. You've got good grip, particularly in kind of muddier kind of terrain. That offers a very good kind of overall ride as well, and good protective elements there as well too. But I think in terms of this shoe, I think you're getting something that works at, I think, you know, for cruising at long distance, for going and running a little bit quicker as well. You've got a strong, you know, level of grip, a comfortable upper overall, and elements that make it a very good trail shoe overall, one that I've kind of enjoyed running in overall. Okay, so there you have it. That is our multi-tester take on the Inov-8 Trailfly Ultra G280. Now, if you've got any more questions about this shoe or any other shoes you want to see it compared to, let us know in the comments. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos, and yeah, we'll see you for the next run testers video.